Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayesh Vabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. It's May 15th, 2021. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, entitled Answers by Citing the Lord's Version. We're on text 30. Text 30, Chapter 9. Yavat Sakha Sakyu Eva Isha Te Krita Praja Visarge Vibhajami Bo Janam Aviklava Te Parikarmani Stita Ma Me Samunadha Mada Aja Manina Yavatsaka Sakyur Iveshate Krita.
Can you tell me the rest? I'm not finding.
Text 30. Text 30. Yavatsaka Sakyur Iveshate Krita. Prajavi Sarge Vibhajami Bhojanam. Aviklavaste Parikarmani Stito. Mame Samunadha Madhuja Manina. Yavatsaka Sakyur Iveshate Krita. Prajavi Sarge Vibhajami Bhojanam. Aviklavaste Parikarmani Stito. Mame Samunadha Madhuja Manina. Yavatsaka Sakyur Iveshate Krita. Prajavi Sarge Vibhajami Bhojanam. Aviklavaste Parikarmani Stito. Mame Samunadha Madhuja Manina. Yavatsaka Sakyur Iveshate Krita. Praja Visarge Vibhajami Bhojanam. Aviklavaste Parikarmani Stito. Mame Samunadha Madhuja Manina.
Yavatsaka Sakyur Iveshate Krita.
Yavatsaka Sakyur Iveshate Krita.
Praja Visarge Vibhajami Bhojanam.
Praja Visarge Vibhajami Bhojanam.
Aviklavaste parikarmanistito.
Aviklavaste parikarmanistito.
Mame samudnadam nado chamanina.
Mame samunata madoja manina.
Yavat Saka Sakyur Ivesha Tekrita.
Yavat sakasakya te krita.
Raja Visarke Vivajami Bojanam.
Praja visarge vibhajami bhojanam.
Aviklavaste Parikramanishtito.
Aviklavaste parikarmani stito.
Mame Samunadha Madojamanina.
Mame samunadha madoja manina.
Yavatsaka Sakyuriveshate Krita
Yavatsaka sakyuri veshate krita.
Prajavasarge Vibhajami Bhojanam
Praja visarge vibhajami bhojanam.
Aviklavaste Parikarmani Stito
Aviklavaste parikarmani stito.
Mame Samunada Madoja Manmanina
Tanina.
Yavataka sakyur iveshate krita.
Yavatsaka sakyuri veshate krita.
Praja visarge vibhajani bhojanam.
Praja visarge vibhajami bhojanam.
Aviklavaste parikarmanishtito.
Aviklavaste parikarmani stito.
Mame samunanda madojamanina.
Mame samunadha madoja manina. Yavat,
Yavat,
as it is.
as it is.
Saka,
Saka,
friend.
friend.
Sakyu,
Sakyu,
unto the friend.
unto the friend.
Eva,
Eva,
like that.
like that.
Isha,
Isha,
O Lord.
O Lord.
Te,
Te,
you.
you.
Krita,
Krita,
have accepted.
have accepted.
Praja,
Praja,
the living entities.
living entities.
Visarge,
Visarge,
in the matter of creation.
in the matter of creation.
Vibhajami,
Vibhajami,
as I shall do it differently.
as I shall do it differently.
Bo,
Bo,
O my Lord.
O my Lord.
Janam,
Janam,
those who are born.
those who are born.
Aviklava,
Aviklava,
without being perturbed.
without being perturbed.
Te,
Te,
your
your
parikarmani,
parikarmani,
in the matter of service.
in the matter of service.
Stita,
Skita,
thus situated.
thus situated.
Ma,
Ma,
may it never be.
may it never be.
May,
May,
unto me,
unto me,
samunadha,
samunadha,
resulting arise.
resulting arise.
Mada,
Mada,
madness.
madness.
Aja,
Aja,
O unborn one.
O unborn one.
Manina,
Manina,
thus being thought of.
thus being thought of.
Translation. This is Lord Brahma speaking. O my Lord, the unborn, you have shaken hands with me just as a friend does with a friend, as if equal in position. I shall be engaged in the creation of different types of living entities, and I shall be occupied in your service. I shall have no perturbation, but I pray that all this may not give rise to pride, as if I were the supreme. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Lord Brahma is definitely situated in the humor of friendship with the Lord. Every living being is eternally related with the personality of Godhead in one of 5 different transcendental humors, namely Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. We have already discussed these 5 kinds of humors in relationship with the personality of Godhead. It is clearly exhibited herein that Lord Brahma is related to the personality of Godhead in the transcendental humor of friendship. A pure devotee may be related with the Lord in any one of the transcendental humors, even in the humor of parenthood. But the devotee of the Lord is always a transcendental servitor. No one is equal to or greater than the Lord. That is the version of the Bhagavad Gita. Brahmaji, although eternally related with the Lord in the transcendental humor of friendship, and although entrusted with the most exalted post of creating different grades of living entities, is still conscious of his position that he is neither the Supreme Lord nor supremely powerful. It is possible that some extremely powerful personality within or without the universe may sometimes show more power than the Lord himself. Still, the pure devotee knows that this power is a vibhuti delegated by the Lord, and such a delegated, powerful living entity is never independent. Sri Hanumanji crossed the Indian Ocean by jumping over the sea, and Lord Ramachandra engaged himself in marching over the bridge. But this does not mean that Hanumanji was more powerful than the Lord. Sometimes the Lord gives extraordinary powers to his devotee, but the devotee knows always that the power belongs to the personality of Godhead and that the devotee is only an instrument. The pure devotee is never puffed up like the non-devotee class of men who falsely think that they are God. It is astonishing to see how a person who is being kicked by the laws of the Lord's illusory energy at every step can falsely think of becoming one with the Lord. Such thinking is the last snare of the illusory energy offered to the conditioned soul. The first illusion is that he wants to become Lord of the material world by accumulating wealth and power, but when he is frustrated in that attempt, he wants to be one with the Lord. So both becoming the most powerful man in the material world and desiring to become one with the Lord are different illusory snares. And because the pure devotees of the Lord are surrendered souls, they are above the illusory snares of Maya. Because Lord Brahma is a pure devotee, even though the first dominating deity in the material world and therefore able to do many wonderful things, he would never, like the non-devotee with a poor fund of knowledge, have the audacity to think of becoming one with the Lord. People with a poor fund of knowledge should take lessons from Brahma when they are puffed up with the false notion of becoming God. Factually, Lord Brahma does not create the living entities. In the beginning of the creation, he is empowered to give different bodily shapes to the living entities according to their work during the last millennium. Brahmaji's duty is just to wake the living entities from their slumber and to engage them in their proper duty. The different grades of living entities are not created by Brahmaji by his capricious whims, but he is entrusted with the task of giving the living entities different grades of body so that they can work accordingly. And still he is conscious that he is only instrumental, so that he may not think of himself as the supreme powerful Lord. Devotees of the Lord are engaged in a specific duty offered by the Lord, and such duties are successfully carried out without hindrance because they are ordained by the Lord. The credit of success goes not to the doer, but to the Lord. But persons with a poor fund of knowledge take the credit of success into their own accounts and give nothing to the credit of the Lord. That is the symptom of the non-devotee class of men. Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurandilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamupakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Purijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakanvitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansikalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, Paschatya Desha Tarine. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Text 30. Yavatsaka Sakiri Veshate Krita Praja Visarge Vibhajami Bhojanam Aviklavaste Parikarmani Stito Mame Samunada Madoja Manina. O my Lord, the unborn, you have shaken hands with me just as a friend does with a friend, as if equal in position. I shall be engaged in the creation of different types of living entities, and I shall be occupied in your service. I shall have no perturbation, but I pray that all this may not give rise to pride, as if I were the supreme. Hare Krishna. So this is Brahma's last statement. This is his last verse in this series of verses, and starting in the next verse, Sri Krishna, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, will speak, the Lord of Goloka Vrindavan, the Lord of Vrindavan, and he'll be soon speaking the seed verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. And so Brahma's about to engage in this big service, that he's the engineer of the entire material universe. And just to give perspective, in a sense, it's not that big. This is regarded as one of the relatively smaller material universes. Okay, so still, we can think about, I need to manage things, and how can I balance my checkbook and stuff like that. So Brahma's got a lot to do. One thing we can see is this bhakti yoga. It's a very world-embracing process. It's not world or life negating. Right? Brahma's engaging with the material energy in all of its variety and in all of its power and glory and devastating potency. And so he's, so bhakti is it's a very affirming process. Here we hear Brahma's essential svarup, Siddha with Krishna is as a friend. And so Prabhupada talks about, so there's varieties of relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So sure, there are places in the Vedas where it's described that, yes, the Supreme has no hands, no legs, no variety, no energies, and there's no activities. And that's meeting certain people where they're at, people who want a more negating process of spiritual life. And there's truth to that, negating matter. That material friendship, that's just an illusion. Material romance, that's just an illusion. Material adventure, that's just an illusion. Material activities, so spiritual life means to negate that. So that's partial, that there's truth to that. And so sometimes the Vedas speak to those who want that sort of path. And so bhakti yoga is like, that's true. So true spiritual life, it's about pulling the weeds of material relationship and cultivating positive spiritual relationships. So Krishna, the Supreme Lord, he's playing a flute. There's musical instruments, spiritual musical instruments. And he's engaged in all sorts of loving activities with his devotees, with his spiritual parents, with his spiritual romantic partners. And so what to get the affirming spiritual relationship, spiritual form, spiritual activity, spiritual name, spiritual vibration, spiritual sound vibration, that's true mantra, then automatically Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Projita Janiyat Yashu Vairagyam Gyanam Chayadhutakam, automatically we're detached from the material form, the material sound vibration, etc. And so ultimately the goal of the Vedas is to bring us to this realization of Brahma, of spiritual friendship, spiritual form, spiritual sound vibration. So Brahma is about to embark deeply into the material energy. Of course, for a devotee, there's nothing material. To the extent that we truly see Krishna everywhere, to the extent that we're truly realized, and realizing God everywhere, Rasoham Apsukonteya, in the taste of water, Prabhasmi Sasi Suryayu, in the light of the sun and the moon, in the fragrance of the earth, Dharma Viruddha Bhuteshu Kamosmi Bharatarshava, even in the sexual energy, Krishna says he's present there in all aspects of material energy. And so it's a very life affirming, world affirming process, and it's a science. It's a science of shit. So to the extent that we're not expert in making distinctions in the context of that science of self-realization, the science of God consciousness, then we'll get bewildered. Then for us, the energy is material. For Brahma, for Krishna, there is no, for Brahma, the pure devotee of Krishna, and for Krishna himself, there's no material. It's all meant to be engaged in the service, in bhakti yoga, in the service of the Supreme. So Brahma, he's embarking on this big service. So this is a principle it's a principle that, so then he's going in this big service and he's praying that the weeds in his heart will be pulled. Of course, we don't perceive that Brahma has weeds, but in his humility, he's saying, yes, I have a propensity that I'm going to be doing this big service and I'll think I'm supreme and I'll be proud. So he's praying intensely from the core of his heart. Okay, let me not become proud in doing this service. Okay, and this is Brahma. So a principle that I'm gleaning from this, a principle that I'm gleaning here is that so there's our internal work, and then let's call it our external service. And when we're appropriately balanced, then they're complementary. Then I'm taking on service on behalf of Lord Brahma, who's the chief of our sampradaya. I'm taking on service, and to stretch myself into that bigger service, I need to be deeper in my consciousness. I need to be cleaner in my consciousness. Right? Because there could be some, if we don't stretch ourselves enough in taking on responsibility for spiritual service, then there could be weeds in the garden of our heart. There could be weeds in the garden of our heart that will never come up in this lifetime, and we'll need to take birth again to pull those weeds, to at least open the lid and see what's in there. So by stretching ourselves, then the fear, the envy, the laziness, the greed, the deception, in order to be successful and effective in this service, I need to come to a higher gear of my focus, my intensity, my clarity, the cleanness of my heart. Now that's different than escaping into this goal and that goal and that goal, escaping externally to avoid what's happening within. So we can see Brahma, such a effective, potent balance. No, he's stretching himself to do the service for Krishna as we get to stretch ourselves to relieve the burden, relieve some of the burden of Srila Prabhupada, to relieve some of the burden of Srila Prabhupada, to relieve some of his transcendental anxiety that, okay, I'll take on this service on your behalf, Srila Prabhupada. Right? Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur said, anxieties undertaken in your service, Krishna, are the source of my greatest ecstasy. So it's a distinction. Material anxiety, which we just fester in it, and it alienates us further and further from the self for some shadow payoffs. And then spiritual anxiety moves us to deeper enthusiasm and focus and intensity to serve with enthusiasm this most sublime mission. And so, right, okay, and then similarly, so and the more we pull the weeds internally, our propensity for material enjoyment, our propensity for my need to be special, my need to be distinctive, my need to be famous, name and fame, weeds of envy, greed, all of that. The more we pull that, then the more we open our heart for the natural enthusiasm and inspiration and love of God to do service. So it's this, the insight leads to action, action leads to insight, like that. And Brahma is appreciated because Brahma is praying for humility. Humility, pridelessness, it's the first quality required to progress back home, back to Godhead. That in order to be steady in our self-realization, steady in kirtan, steady in the process of diksha, in the process of initiation, steady in service, first is required to regard oneself as lower than a blade of grass, cultivate the mentality of being more tolerant than a tree, ready to offer all respects to others, demanding no respect for myself. In such a state of mind, we're not going to get distracted by ego demands, gross or subtle, and we get to steadily do joyful devotional service. And so Brahma's appreciating Krishna's humility, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, Krishna's humility, that if anyone could be on, feel superior, it's Krishna. And Brahma's appreciating, oh, you shook my hand like a friend. Brahma's appreciating Krishna's humility. And so Prabhupada's making the point that Brahma's in the Sakya Ras, Sakam Vijavu Krita Punya Punja. Satam, yes, Shukadev Goswami describes the friendship Ras, the friendship Ras with Krishna. So just like we have friendship relationships here, master servant and employee and employer, and neutrality relationships and romance relationships, adventure relationships, humor relationships. So this is just a shadow of those relationships in their pure, fully alive form in the spiritual realm. And Bhakti Yoga is about Atashri Krishna Namadi, Namba Vedgraim Indriya, Sevan Mukhi Jivada, Svayameva Sparat Yada, that by practicing bhakti, we purify our senses. And we're actually transforming even our body and senses get transformed as the subtle body gets transformed, and our spiritual senses, our spiritual relationships awaken through practicing this process. And we're recommended to not prematurely ruminate on what Brahma's is friendship. And what's mine? We're recommended to dedicate ourselves in a service relationship with that my Jiva Rasrupoi Krishnera Nityadas Krishnera Tatasta Shakti Beta Beta Prakash. That's my eternal nature. I'm a servant of Krishna, because all of these rasas, all of these spiritual relationships with God, they're all founded on service. They're all founded on service. So we get, while as spirit souls in this particular body, we get to practice serving Krishna. We get to practice doing what the spirit soul in enlightenment does eternally. And then as we practice, then in its own time, just as the sun rises in its own time, it's not something that can be forced. In its own time, then our particular personal rasa with Krishna gets revealed. It's not something that the devotee worries about prematurely. So the devotee, like the mentality isn't like, I want to be advanced in the rasas. The mentality is, how can I do more service for Srila Prabhupada's movement today than I did yesterday? We're interested in service, not advancement, so-called. And through service, then progress in pulling the weeds in the heart, in developing more and more enthusiasm for what's really important. That sort of happiness that will never be crushed by time, that naturally increases. And so now Brahma's service itself, Prabhupada writes factually, Lord Brahma does not create the living entities. All right, so this points because like sometimes in evolutionary theory, like Darwinian evolutionary theory, it's described like that just the fact that there are so many varieties of species, that shows that's like a proof of evolution. Well, let's think about it. So like, so let's say, okay, so it's kind of like, okay, there's a variety of motor vehicles, right? We got the compact, we got the sedan, we got the military tank, we got the luxury. There's a whole variety of motor vehicles, hundreds and hundreds. So we can say, okay. So the fact that there's a variety of motor vehicles, that proves that the motor scooter evolved and morphed into the moped. And then the moped morphed into the Harley. And then the Harley morphed into the Lexus. And we go, well, no, it doesn't prove that at all, actually. No, actually, variety of motor vehicles indicates that there's a creator, a team of creators, and they designed different types of motor vehicles with different forms for different purposes, because there's different drivers who have different amounts of money to spend and different needs. One wants to go fast, one wants to make sure I can park in tight city parking spaces, like that. So just to diffuse the irrational so-called logic of that theory, not really a theory, more like a fantasy. So Brahma doesn't create the living entities, right? He's like the chief engineer in the automobile plant. And we got, and in that particular automobile plant, they have 8,400,000 models of vehicles, and Brahma's in charge of it all. He's the engineer, and he's got his assistants and things like that. But he doesn't create the drivers, right? He creates 8,400,000 types of compartments, and then the different drivers, the different spirit souls, according to their desire and deserve and karmic history and intentions, then they inhabit the body of a human in America or Europe, or a cockroach in India, or an amoeba, or a demigod, like that. So 8,400,000, that's very precise in the pages. Okay. And so it's important, Prabhupada really deconstructs the fallacies of the basic, the substratum of the conceptions given by modern science. Bhakti yoga. It's spiritual science, meaning consistent theory, consistent hypothesis, and we get to practice the process to have an experience. That's a basic scientific method. Logical hypothesis, and then an experiment we can do to confirm or disconfirm the assertions of the hypothesis. So we get to do this experiment of bhakti yoga to directly experience, I am a spirit soul, to directly experience all the truths of here related to the self, related to super consciousness, related to matter, related to time, related to activity. So yeah, I might say that the three basic paradigms that are, for the most part, blindly accepted in modern, I'll call it in scientism. Scientism means a dogmatic reliance on positive empiricism, a dogmatic reliance on through material empirical methods we can get absolute knowledge. Even outside of Bhakti Yoga spheres, as decades go on, there's less and less trust in that stance. That gets into postmodernism and things like that. But basically, so the paradigms, they go against basic physics itself, like physics, entropy, that a system without conscious intervention falls into more and more disorder. So the whole idea of like evolution, that entities with lower levels of organized structure because let's keep in mind that in the paradigms of modern scientism, there's not like a conscious being. So like levels, systems of lower organization just sort of magically evolve into systems of higher organization. Or if we trace it back further, the Big Bang, right? That the idea is that, yes, so from a big explosion, the big explosion naturally resulted in Shakespeare's sonnets, right? So generally we don't see that, or we never see that. Like, let's say if a bomb explodes on a city block, then the city block becomes this more organized, beautiful thing. If a bomb explodes over a city, then the city becomes more structured. No, explosions don't lead to higher. So it's just, or the idea of life coming from matter, right? Science means you can see. Science means you can actually experience. Okay, so who's ever seen life coming from matter? Who's ever seen an explosion leading to higher levels of structure and organization? Right? So it's like it all goes against the basic principle of science. Means, I can see it. I actually did the experiment. Who's ever seen one species evolve into another? Well, we just accept what the Pope says. Okay. Have you ever seen one species evolve into another? Has anyone ever see it happen in nature? Has anyone ever seen it in a laboratory? No. But all progressive thinkers know, all scientists, this is the veil of illusion, Maya Paritagyana, so-called knowledge covered by illusion. Right? So here we have Brahma, highly intelligent, living entity, and he's creating the structures, because matter on its own doesn't form higher levels of organization. It requires consciousness for higher levels of organization. Just like, okay, so let's say our homes, or okay, like let's say if there's dishes in the kitchen sink, and there's all sorts of clutter. So we know if we don't do anything, then within a day or two, the dishes magically get cleaned. We all have that experience, right? The clutter becomes very neat and organized. We don't need to do anything, right? No? Okay. You've detected sarcasm. Yes. No. If we want the kitchen to be more organized, clean, neat, we need to apply consciousness. Yogeshwar is, yeah, well, that's Yogeshwar means master of mystic power, right? Yeah, Yogeshwar it means master of mystic power. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, so he gets all credit. Yeah, he gets all credit for that. So no, so we need to apply conscious energy for lower organizational system to come to higher organizational system. So Brahma's doing that, creating the 8,400,000 apartments or compartments or types of vehicles. Okay. And so he's got this, this challenging service. He's stretching himself. Prabhupada makes the point, Prabhupada says, the credit of success goes not to the doer, but to the Lord. But persons with a poor fund of knowledge take the credit of success into their own accounts and give nothing to the credit of the Lord. That is the symptom of the non-devotee class of men. So we can understand this properly. So like, let's say if someone is accomplishing service, it's not our role to go, oh, you don't get any credit. It's all Krishna. This principle is to be applied to ourselves. Okay. It's to help us to be in the spirit of Brahma, to not become, wow, I did that. I'm great, like that. It's like, okay, okay. But for others, yeah, we want to give sincere souls credit and acknowledge them. And like let's say Arjuna. So, well, Arjuna doesn't get any credit. It's all Krishna. No, Arjuna surrendered. So it's like, wow, she or he, they surrendered their false ego. They were all struggling with the mind and grungy, garbage, self-defeating. We're all struggling with that. And look what he did. He just, whatever, he went inside himself. And look at that service he's doing. Look how steady she is. We want to appreciate the devotees. And for ourselves, we want to be, this humility, it's not humiliation. And we want to be, Tateinu kampam susumikshimano bunjana eva makritam vipakam vibhagva purbya vidadan namaste jivitiyo mukti pade sadayava. Yeah, we want to be cultivating the capacity to recognize Krishna's hand in everything, especially where there are reverses. Okay, yeah, things didn't go so well according to script. Okay, so let me see how I can realize Krishna's grace in this, realize the capacity to look at my shortcomings, to pull the weeds, to be more enthusiastic, to develop gratitude for Krishna's presence in my life, like that. Okay, there's a lot here. We just touched on a few points. We're coming to several verses with some lengthy purports. For some of them, we might spend more than one day on them. So I'll read the verse again. And I see, Casey, you have your hand raised. I look forward to hear your comment or question. Yavatsaka sakya iveshate krita prajavi sarge vibhajami bhojanama viklavaste parikarmani stito mame samunada madoja manina. O my Lord, the unborn, you have shaken hands with me, just as a friend does with a friend, as if equal in position. I shall be engaged in the creation of different types of living entities, and I shall be occupied in your service. I shall have no perturbation, but I pray that all this may not give rise to pride as if I were the supreme. Hare Krishna. Thanks for listening. Casey.
Hi, good morning. If I'm remembering correctly, in the very beginning, you had said that Krishna is in everything, right?
Yeah.
And also in our heart, and yet we're not one with God. And that part is hard for me to understand. I'm wondering if you could explain that further.
Okay, thanks for your question. I appreciate your question. Yes. So, yeah, well, your question really points to the essence of this whole philosophy of all these books. And the philosophy is called Achintya Beta Beta Tattva, which means simultaneously one and different. So we're not exactly the same as the Lord, as Krishna, and we're not completely different. An example that's often given, Krishna Ratatasta Shakti Beta Beta Prakash, an example is often given in these ancient literatures, is the example of the sun and the sun rays. So like, let's say if I'm here in my home at around 6:15 a.m., I might say, the sun's coming into my room. And that's true, because the sun rays are non-different from the sun. At the same time, they're not exactly the same, because when I say, the sun's coming into my room, I'm not saying the sun globe is in my room, right? The sun globe is like 1.4 million times the volume of Earth. So the sun rays, they're not completely different than the sun, just like the sun has heat and illumination. The sun ray, each sun ray has heat and illumination. At the same time, well, the sun rays are not exactly the same as the sun, right? Like in quantity and the sun's moving in space, and the sun's gravitational pull is is infinitely greater than the sun rays. So there's differences. So we have some simple, like our essential nature as spirit souls is we're eternal and full of bliss and knowledge, and we have form, spiritual body, and so does Krishna. At the same time, quantitatively, that we're like a spark of the fire, and Krishna is the entire fire. Krishna is a Vasudeva, a personality that exists in everyone's heart. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Videsh Arjuna Tishtati. So in your body and in my body, in the body of all living entities, in the body of all 8,400,000 vehicles, there's really two people. There's two people. There's the soul, that's me. The actual person I call David Wolf, you call Casey Fume. The actual person is a spirit soul inside the body. And sitting right next to us, Sarvasya Chamridisa Nivisto Matas Mitirganamapu, sitting right next to us in the region of the heart is a full expansion of God, a full expansion of Krishna called Paramatma. We are Atma. Atma means soul, and Paramatma means supreme soul. So a full expansion of Krishna is sitting right next to us in our heart. Even more pervasively, Anantarasta Paramanu Chantarasta, a full expansion of Krishna, who is the source and Lord of Brahma, who's speaking this verse. A full expansion of Krishna is within every atom and within the heart of Krishna is the soul of our soul. So we are one with God in some ways, and we're separate in others. Mame Vancha Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, Manasasthan Indriyane, Prakriti Sthani Karshati. Now we can bridge that apparent separation. The bridge is bhakti. The bridge is loving devotional service. Now through loving devotional service, we don't lose our individual identity. This is an important point. Natvevaham jatuna samnatvam name janadipa nachevana bhavishima sarvevayamatakparam. Krishna says right towards the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings on the battlefield, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Meaning, while we're in this body or after the demise of this body, we continue as eternal personalities. So we never become one with God in that way. Oneness in Bhakti Yoga means I'm one in desire. And through that means that I use my free will to form my desire as fully aligned with Krishna's desire, so that my thoughts, actions, words, they're all pleasing to Krishna. That's bhakti oneness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
I appreciate your question, Casey. Thank you. Bria.
I thought it was interesting in the last paragraph of the purport that Prabhupada said that the specific duty is offered by the Lord.
Yeah.
That our occupational duty, like I've never heard it phrased that way. Like I've heard like that we have one, but I've never heard it phrased as that we are. It's like offered like a gift from the Lord that we have this occupational duty.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
Thanks for noting that. Yeah. Thanks for noting that. Yes. So in this, I like that you use the word gift. It's a gift, as many of you know, when Prabhupada came to the West around the age of 70, and after lots of struggle on the ship, and 2 heart attacks, and through Pittsburgh, and then traveled through Philadelphia and came to New York, more struggle, and then some became his students, and they found a storefront in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and on the storefront it was written "Matchless Gifts," and so they were thinking, well, okay, they'll need to erase that or paint over that, but Prabhupada said, no, that's perfect. This is clearly Krishna's arrangement. It was called Matchless Gifts. So this is that's it, because like materially, it's just like, I have to serve. Oh, I want to be served. I have to serve. But then if we take that to spiritual life, we won't get very far. So spiritual life, wow, I get to do this service. This is the greatest gift. I get to do devotional service. And a foundation service is chanting. This is so Brahma has his service. He's creating the universe, including the 8,400,000 bodies of the types of species. And we have our service. And then, so like we get this gift of the service of chanting. In the very first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, the sages headed by Saunaka Rishi, they say to Sutta Goswami, living entities who are entangled in the complicated meshes of the cycle of birth and death can be freed immediately by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by fear personified. So this is the gift of, I get to chant Hare Krishna. I get to chant the names of Krishna. What could be a greater gift? This relieves me of all fear, and we're all suffering with fear and material anxiety. So I appreciate that you pointed that out, that all types of service to cultivate that gratitude. This is the greatest gift. Thank you.
I see Brielle's comment connected with Lord Brahma, say no perturbation, and I'm very touched by this verse. In fact, the lights, like how by being an instrument of the Lord, that's all we need to do, and the no perturbation seems to highlight the gift. Like, okay, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, what you gave me to do, with all the ingredients, and there will be no perturbation as long as I don't go into being puffed up and thinking I'm the doer, or I'm powerful, or because I'm so special and I'm different, or it's because I am intelligent, or all those things that we can tell ourselves when we achieve anything.
Thank you, Melanie. Thanks for noting that language that Prabhupada uses to translate Lord Brahma. Yeah, I have no perturbation. So he's saying, like, I'm good. Like, I'm fearless. We can in hearing you, Melanie, I'm getting like a deeper sense of Brahma's joy and bliss in getting to do this service. Yeah, like I have no perturbation, and at the same time, like he has this spiritual fear and anxiety that he'll be influenced by pride, which would be terrible. That would spoil everything. So yeah, it's described. Bayam Dutya Viniveshatasya, the root cause of all anxiety. So it's very relevant because we've all been tormented by anxiety. The root cause of all anxiety is misidentification of the eternal spiritual self with temporary matter, with the temporary material body. And then If I'm identifying with anything matter, I'm going to serve matter. I'm going to have material goals, and that becomes a whole festival of anxiety. Damayanti, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. This class is again, I don't know why, but every class is like, it's a perfect message for me. I wrote I wrote a small book, and I'm getting like congratulations and stuff from people, or people that are appreciating my effort to have put a book together. And as I was finally like publishing it, I was like, this is just like concepts that I didn't make any of these concepts up. They all existed already, and I pulled them together. And also I got this feeling like of total detachment, like I don't know why this is my life story and what it's sort of like this is just my story and my experience and the philosophy that makes sense to me, and I'm sharing it. But I had a sense of like, I can't really take credit for the fact that this is how my life unfolded, and these are the things that I realized. Like basically whatever I shared in the book, and it's really God conscious, it's really Krishna conscious actually. And that I'm proud of. Like I'm have some pride that I went there. I could have wrote a book about practical parenting or personal growth in parenting and did not mention God, but I decided to fully mention God in the whole entire book. But besides making that choice, I see like flaws. I could have done this 15 years ago. Not that I could have talked about God 15 years ago, but there's I stalled. It's not like long book, and there's all these flaws that I see. But anyway, it's a perfect little example of like, okay, I created something. It's not that amazing. It is if it talks about God. People are going to appreciate it, but I don't want to get puffed up about how amazing it is. I put a small book together. It's just concepts that already existed. Anyway, it's interesting to have created something small and share it. By sharing it, I'm going to be getting response, like feedback, or people are going to have their experience. And it's important that I express that. What I expressed was I felt really passionate about what I said. And I did it for self-expression. And then furthermore, I think it will be a service to people. I don't know. It's just interesting that I created something and it relates to this class today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dami. Thank you. I'm moved to hear how you're seeing yourself in Brahma's process, particularly in this verse. I appreciate your sharing. Len Cohen.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So I appreciate this phrase of yours that you mentioned, that humility is not humiliation. And I'm really dwelling on that personally, because for me, growing up and the time I did and my feelings about myself, I mean, your self-image, that in my training didn't really come from how much service I was doing for God. It had to do with my achievements, my feelings about myself, and how important it was to like yourself, to really look at your strengths and appreciate all these things about yourself, so that you don't feel that you're worthless. So for me, it's a big struggle to want to be humble and to think of myself as, lower than a blade of grass. It's like, wait a minute, I'm struggling my whole life to feel good about myself. Now you're saying, don't be puffed up, don't be so proud. This is not going to contribute to my spiritual growth. So this is my quandary, I guess. Which way do I go? Is it important to feel good about myself, or can I really believe that, yes, to be fully spiritually realized, and to experience the ultimate in bliss, happiness, and knowledge, the way is to be humble and not to try and build myself up. You see? Yes. So humility, yes, in my mind, yeah, humility is humiliation maybe, but I want to come around more to, no, humility is not humiliation. But thank you for bringing that up, David.
Thank you, Bhakti. I appreciate your sharing. Yeah, thank you. There's a lot there. But just like with all qualities, there's material humility, which can be this kind of artificial humility, and then there's spiritual humility. And in spiritual humility, the devoted soul is experiencing profound bliss and empowerment. When Prabhupada was on the Jaladuta, we read some of his poems, and he's praying to Krishna. He says, I have no knowledge and I have no devotion. All I have is faith, trust in the mission of my spiritual master and in chanting the holy names of Krishna. So Prabhupada is saying he has no knowledge and devotion. Personally, I'm very proud by how much knowledge and devotion I have. Okay. Prabhupada is feeling that he has no knowledge and devotion. So we can think that, oh, he needs more self-esteem. But no, it's real. It's spiritual humility. And that feeling of no knowledge and no devotion, all I have is trust in the mission of Bhakti Siddhanta and chanting the names of Krishna. That's moving him to even deeper determination to serve Krishna's mission. So that's the test, whether it's spiritual humility moving me to deeper inspiration to serve with not getting distracted by nonsense, or material humility, then it's I'm alienated. Maybe material humility, it's actually tamas gun, and it's an excuse to not do anything because I'm so fallen. I'm not even qualified to read Bhagavatam. So I'm not going to read Bhagavatam. I'll do something else because I'm not puffed up. Okay, stuff like that. So at the same time, Bhaktilan, because like in some of our courses, as you're familiar, we'll go like someone gets a contract, powerful, vibrant, and valuable. We can say, okay, so that can lead to being puffed up. There's a quote by Bhakti Siddhanta that I heard. Bhakti Siddhanta said, for some of my disciples, it would be a great achievement to come to the mode of passion. Okay, so at some level of personal growth, yeah, to come from just doing in shame and wallowing in guilt and like that, to come to some passionate, like, yeah, I'm powerful, I can do things, I got qualities. That can actually be a step up. That can be a stage. So there can be a stage for that. And because we can talk about pure devotional service, if in the name of false humility, if we're withholding any parts of ourself, if any parts of ourself are covered in shadows, then there's no question, pure devotional service means giving myself fully, all parts of myself. We need to have all parts of ourself available, including our power and our love and our energy and our vibrancy and our intelligence. And so to awaken that, yeah, I do have those qualities, that can be a step up from ignorance. Okay. And then, okay, then we can become more entangled because we become proud of what I did with my power and my riches or whatever. Then, okay, then I've awakened to those qualities. Now, let me use them in a sattvic transcendental way with humility. Let me use them in a way that supports me and others to realize the ultimate source of all quality, the ultimate source. So I appreciate your question, revealing your personal process. Thank you, Len. Ladini Shakti.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I'm appreciating this discussion very much. And I also like the verse, how Lord Brahma is like getting so much responsibility and he's praying for staying humble in that because he knows like if I'm like creating the whole universe and all these material bodies and like that, I might become think like, oh, I'm God. I have so much experience of that. Like anytime something goes well in my life, I go there like I'm so good, like I'm such a great cook, or I am like so good in distributing Bhagavad Gita, or I can control my anger. And I don't even pray for humility, but as soon as I come to that pride platform, then I'm like smashed again and again. So I feel quite relaxed about it. Like I feel relaxed about this like pride coming because I trust that Krishna is in charge. And also with Brahma, I was just reading in Krishna book how he like Lord Brahma is coming to visit Krishna in Dwarka. And Krishna is like, okay, which Brahma is coming? Which Brahma is coming? And so the doorkeeper goes to Brahma and says, like, Krishna is asking which Brahma is coming. And for Brahma, it's like so perplexing. Like, why is Krishna asking which Brahma? Like, I am, I'm the only Brahma, the head of the universe. And so, like, Krishna fulfills this prayer of Brahma to, like, really help him to stay humble in his service. And really, like, the material nature is so created that we all, like, it's not that difficult to to come to this humility, and then the pride comes again because that's our nature, I guess. And I really like how you like expanded on it, Dhira Govinda Prabhu, during the class about like when we give ourselves to service, then the weeds come up. So that's it, really. Like it's easy to like do nothing and like feel like, oh, I have no weeds. But then when I interact with people and like I go out in the world and I have some success, then all these things come up, like pride. Like if I lay down in bed, I will probably not be proud. But if I do something that like has results, then pride comes. But then Krishna is there, like he has my back for sure. So.
Thank you, Ladini Shakti. I'm reminded of a text from the Bible. Yeah, pride comes before the fall. So, yeah. So I know I've experienced that. Like I can think of times in my life, but pretty much every day I experience that. Just like, yeah, like if I controlled my eating or sleeping, just like that. And then, like, hey, that's pretty good. I'll think like that, and then I'll get smashed. I'll be embarrassed. I'll be embarrassed and like embarrassed, in how Krishna has a sense of humor. He has a sense of humor, and so so we get proud. So I like you gave that. So with Brahma's praying I don't become pride. So Krishna arranged that whole thing so he meets like thousands of other Brahmas who are just like doing far more service. So I like how you said that Krishna has my back, and that can sometimes be in edgy ways, nurturing ways, challenging ways, stretchy ways to help us to go wherever we need to go in ourselves, so that all we want is that spiritual service. Hare Krishna.
Exactly. I just want to add that it's also my daily experience. And sometimes when I see like this pride is coming up, I'm like, no, I'm not, because I don't want the fall that comes after, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, I relate to that. Yeah, and because and that's the idea that like because there's gross sense gratification, and we get like, okay, I know I have enough experience that's the source of misery, and then subtle gratification, like let me get like, no, that'll be a source of misery. I can enjoy it for a few minutes, and then I'm going to get smashed. So let me learn my lesson. Thank you, Ladini Shakti. Bhakti Keith.
Hello, Hare Krishna. Yeah, I'm appreciating how Brahma was praying for that. not be proud. Because it's like a snake that creeps up inside of you, you know? You see it coming, you know what's happening in front of you, and it just makes its way in there. You know, it's like beyond my control, you know, and I'm just appreciating how he was praying for that humility, for that protection. And it is very hard not to take credit. Pride becomes before the fall. I really relate to that, because if I become pride at all, it's like all my endeavors just crash and burn. Like they don't even get off the ground. You know, it's not like I can just like work and accomplish things and then become proud and act like a dick or anything like that. It's just, I don't even make it to that. You know, I just get cut off at the knees. And it's, you know, yeah, I can see how it's closely related to this wanting to be the controller, you know, that keeps me or whoever from just humbly praying for that protection, for that humility. It's like, oh, I got this, I can do it, you know. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I get to say. Yeah.
No, thanks for expressing, Keith. I hear that you're in a deeply moved emotional state, and yes, and that you're there's a lot happening for you, and I experience you as sharing from a deep place of realization. So I thank you for that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you. Prampara asked Brahma and Indra, when they get bewildered in their pastimes with Krishna, is that Yogamaya or Mahamaya? I don't have a definitive answer to that. I'm inclined to say Yogamaya, because we know they're very elevated devotees, and at the same time, maybe Krishna is using some Mahamaya to illustrate to give some message and illustrate some pastimes. So I'm inclined to say Yogamaya, because like Brahma, he's in friendship with the Lord. So when he gets bewildered in Brahma Vimohan Leela, chapter 13, 14 of Canto 10, I'm inclined to say Yogamaya. At the same time, I don't have a definitive answer. Thank you, Parampara. Thank you all for your association. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Hi.
Hare Krishna.